Ghana condemns any act of unilateral use of force, the breach of territorial integrity, and the action that would lead to the independence of individual states being affected. That was a summary of a statement issued by the Foreign Affairs Ministry, as in Ghana's Foreign Affairs Ministry, following the decision of the U.S. to capture the Venezuelan president, his wife, and over accusations that the president has been involved in narco-terrorism. And so questions are being raised about where Ghana stands when it comes to our foreign policy, especially being a country that was a founding member of the non-aligned movement. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Enter. My name is Beatrice Edwin. Tonight, we want to go into this very issue following a number of statements the country has made on global issues, what happened between Israel and Palestine, as well as other issues that have caught international attention. I do have on the panel with me Professor Lord Mawoko Yevuga, who is Director, Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement, also lecturer at GIMPA. He actually joins us via video call. Good evening to you, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Beatrice. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
I also do have a video call with us as well. Honorable Ras Mubarak, Pan-African activist. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you as well for joining us.
Greetings from the Gambia, and as we say in Dagbani, to Yumpali. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Of course, I do have in the studio right here with me on my left side, Dr. David Agbe, Executive Director, Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. Doc, thank you for joining us in studio.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And of course, I do have, last but not the least, Dr. Yaw Gebe, Head of Department, International Relations, Wisconsin University. Doc, it's great to have you as well.
Nice to meet you.
And Happy New Year to you, sir.
The same to you.
All right, I want to start with you, Professor Yevuga, and just reading a bit of the statement issued by the Foreign Affairs Ministry said that the government of Ghana shall maintain and defend its long-held principled position against invasion, occupation, colonialism, apartheid, disregard for sovereignty and all forms of violation of international laws. Looking at this phrase from the statement issued condemning the U.S.'s decision to go into Venezuela, does it give you a clear understanding of where Ghana's foreign policy has been all this while?
Yes, it has. And thank you very much once again. And I think that, you have to contextualize the statement. So if you go to the Constitution of Ghana, 92 Constitution, Article 40, lays out what we call the principles of Ghana's foreign policy. So if you just oppose a statement against those principles of our foreign policy, there's consistency. It talks about the protection of our national interests. It talks about respect for international law and our treaty obligations to the UN Charter, to the African Union, ECOWAS, Commonwealth of Nations. We also talk about the use of peaceful means to resolve international conflicts and all that. So Ghana is actually articulating our foreign policy as spelled out in the Constitution, and it is in keeping with our historical foreign policy orientation from independence to date, so that the statement actually captures the element of our foreign policy historically.
Let me come to you, Dr. Yaw Gebe. Listening to that statement, and I did say that it's not the first you're making. In recent times, we've been commenting on a number of international issues. What kind of understanding do you get as regards where Ghana stands in the international space?
Thank you very much. Ghana's foreign policy has historical antecedents. It's not something that has evolved today. From the time of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, our very first president, certain principles came out very clearly. For instance, our allegiance to the African unity, decolonization, promotion of non-alignment, and all that. And of course, today we are adding other principles: economic diplomacy, non-alignment, neutrality, and what have you. But the question is, anytime we have these international developments, whether it's military intervention as the United States has done, and what have you, we have all states, nations around the world condemning. Is that essentially the issue? That you just condemn, after the condemnation, what else? So I'm not so much about this generic way of conducting international relations, international politics. I have my reservations about it.
Okay, if you could go a bit deeper into it, you think that people are acting on paper rather than taking action. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. the foremost international organization, the United Nations. Very soon they will also be condemning. I'm talking here about the Security Council of the United Nations. They will be condemning, and they will come out with a resolution. The penetrator of that incident, I'm talking of the United States, is a veto-wielding member of the United Nations Security Council. And they are going to veto that resolution. So what are we really doing? Just to condemn for condemning sake. Look at it. Israel, Palestine. After all the condemnation, what did we see? A lot of destruction, killing of human beings. You go to Russia, Ukraine, the same kind of havoc. Today, Russia is still in Ukraine. The United States, they've captured somebody's head of state, taking him to New York, and that's it. So all the condemnation, my question, my central issue is, after that, what else? What should we do as an international community and stop this kind of havoc occurring in the international community? I don't have the answers. And those who are doing the condemnation don't also have the answers. So where are we going as humanity? Where really are we? Are you getting me? Beautiful.
Where are we going as humanity? So I want to get your thoughts as well before I come to you, Mr. Mubarak.
Yes, I think fundamentally, Dr. Marco and Dr. Agabe has, listed Ghana's constitution and then our foreign policy making. And all the statements, or the statement made by the Foreign Affairs Minister, Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa, I must say that is quite commendable and comprehensive enough. We belong to international community, and the foundation of this world, as far as international law and the UN Charter is concerned, believes that no other country should violate the UN Constitution, especially when you read Article 2, Clause 4, it talks about the fact that no nation or no country should refrain from armed aggression or any aggression towards another country to more like adopt a certain president, trying to say that this president has conducted or misconducted himself, and so you want to go to a certain extreme and adopt a certain government. So the foundation of our laws and the constitutions of the United Nations talked about the sovereignty of every country. And in international law, when we talked about the sovereignty, you have that sovereignty that says that Ghana, we are a sovereign country. We have our territorial boundaries. We have our people. We have our citizens. And we have our laws that governs us. We have our government. And so any territorial country or any other country in the world that has all these pillars, Beatrice, you cannot violate the international law and just jump onto another country and say that that president or that country is misbehaving. And so you have the legitimate mandate to also misconduct yourself. And what President Donald Trump has done, I must say that is so horrific to the extent that within the context of United Nations and then United States itself, they are totally ashamed about what the president has done because it has negated all the positive element of U.S. Because all of us, from political science point of view, from international relation point of view, we say and we salute, U.S. all the time that they brought the concept and ideology of democracy. And so if you trample upon that ideology, which has negated all the credibility that United States has, to the extent that you just jumped onto another country, violated their rules, violated the Constitution, and then just adopted the president and say because you want to go there and take over the country and rule their country and take over their oil resources. And so no other country in the world will like what United States has done. Because as it is now, Beatrice, it's just like I am stronger than you, and so I can do whatever pleases my conscience. That is what United States is talking. That is what it is acting now. So as we speak now, they are just paving the way. They are just giving us credence that any other country, as much as you are strong, you have the military power, you have the economic power, you can just jump onto another country and do whatever you want to do. And so we are setting, United States is setting an agenda for anarchy. And that anarchy, when it happens, the Third World War will obviously emerge.
That's the point, perhaps indirectly, Dr. Yaw Gebe made about the need for an institution that has been established to ensure that we don't go there, the need for that institution to step in. And you were quoting the Article 2 of the UN Charter.
Yes,
and
Article
the
2
4
clause
says
4.
that all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. And I'm coming to you, Mr. Mubarak, on this because one of the people who's been very vociferous about this whole thing in Ghana is Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, the man who just concluded that work on the review of the Constitution. This is the first comment he posted on his social media when a day after this happened. He said the United Nations is just a nice place of employment with great employee benefits. Dr. Gebe made a point earlier. Where do you stand on how perhaps the UN's inability, as it were, quote unquote, to deal with these things have fueled some of these things that we're seeing now?
Well, I mean, first of all, invading a country without Security Council authorization is in itself illegal. Now, invading a country, abducting its president and first lady is nothing short of peak gangster imperialism. You know, and what the United States of America has done is to cross every decent red line. But I'm sure we all saw this, coming. We all saw the movement of warships closer to Venezuela. And what we haven't seen whilst the buildup was happening is, strong condemnation, strong words from, countries around the world that, look, what you're doing would not only endanger the lives of, the people in Venezuela and those in the Western Hemisphere, but, would lead to serious consequences around the world. I mean, Venezuela is a member of OPEC. If these situations were to lead, to the rising of fuel prices, it's going to affect market women in Makola, in Kejetia, and elsewhere, within our own country. Meanwhile, we're very far, from the epicenter of this disturbance. The UN, obviously, as far as I am concerned, has outlived, its relevance. You have a situation where, a bunch of powerful people can decide that, they don't give a hoot about international law and they will do whatever they please. This is not the first time, something like this is happening. Russia has invaded, Ukraine without Security Council authorization, exactly 37 years ago, the United States of America. As a matter of fact, I think they did this, for historical consequences as well. On the 3rd of January in '89, they went into Panama, Rambo style. A man, Noriega, who had won elections, who was a man of the people, was deposed and subsequently killed. Nothing came of it. Again, you could talk about the invasion of Iraq, where we were told there were weapons of mass destruction and, they were going to deal with the axis of evil. Again, so-called, leaders of the world massed up, destroyed a country completely. Nothing came of it. You can talk about, events in Libya and so on and so forth. So the U.S., which unfortunately has conducted events in this manner, has clearly discredited the United Nations. I mean, all of us, all countries in the world are supposed, whether big or small, you could be Gambia with a population of 2.7, or Ghana with 33 million people, or Indonesia with hundreds of millions of people. You are enjoined to abide by the rules-based order. But clearly, it doesn't appear to me that the rules-based order is working, or powerful nations are interested in abiding by a charter that we have all, signed up to. I mean, you look at the statements from Europe, and you clearly throw your arms in despair. You would expect strong words from countries such as, the United Kingdom, Germany, and the rest. But they're actually literally slapping Donald Trump in the wrist and struggling to find strong words to show their abhorrence for such rogue behavior. I mean, the world cannot, entertain these kinds of things in 2026. And that is why I am strongly of the opinion that Africa should be drawing serious lessons, working together, building a standalone army, and making sure that we take care of our own, because clearly there's no country in Africa that has nuclear weapons. And the insurance to bullying around the world is having weapons of mass destruction. You can talk about North Korea, they have WMDs, nobody touches them. You can talk about Israel, they've got WMDs, nobody touches them. And so the only insurance to make sure that people like Trump and the US of A would not treat you in the manner they are treating your country is to go rogue. But unfortunately, obviously, as signatories to various international treaties, we are bound by these international treaties for, if you like, nuclear disarmament. In Africa, there's no country with, that capability to show strong deterrence. The only country in Africa that had it was South Africa during the apartheid era. And indeed, when they realized that they were losing their grip on power in South Africa, the white apartheid government completely disarmed. So South Africa is the only country in the world that has peacefully disarmed its weapons of mass destruction. For the rest of them, they want to do whatever they want. They want to invade other people's countries. There's talk about running Venezuela. Can you imagine that a country that has all of these while, projected itself as a respecter of the rule of law, all of a sudden does not respect the rule of law?
And so the question earlier was about, and we had Dr. Yaw Gebe saying that beyond condemnation, there should be some sort of action. How do you see that happening, especially when you expect the UN to lead in this?
Well, I'm a realist. I'm very pragmatic. What can the other countries of the world possibly do? Everyone is, thinking about their economic situations and the implications of the ire, of the anger of the United States of America. Can Ghana impose sanctions on the US of A? I don't think we have what it takes. Can Nigeria do so? I don't think they have what it takes. Can the United Kingdom, which has for the last, 2 or so decades been kissing the backside of the United States of America, impose sanctions? Absolutely not. And so there's got to be a rethink, across the world. Indeed, BRICS, brilliant, but clearly you see also the whittling away of the influence of BRICS. They've completely lost focus. All right? And there's come a time where nations of the world, especially the regional ones, like Africa, like Asia, and others, would begin to think about how they can secure their respective countries. Because you don't want a situation where somebody would wake up one day and then invade your country, impose a no-fly zone like they did in Libya, and there was no consequences.
I'm coming back to you, Professor Yavuga, because earlier I was saying that we've been very vociferous when it comes to these things in recent times. We've commented on the Venezuela bit. We've commented on Israel-Palestine issue as well. How do these comments, as it were, position us in terms of our strength in the global space when it comes to these things?
Yes, Benny. So thank you once again. You see, the discussion has to be properly situated. When it comes to international relations or international politics, there are various ways of interpreting international events. So it shouldn't only be about condemnation, as Dr. Gebe rightly said. So you look at the competing theories and interpretations that we give to international events. Now, we can be here and be criticizing and be offering normative kind of perspectives. But in international relations, there are others who believe that international relations is about politics, hard politics, real politics, we call it. And in that case, they will not see anything wrong with what America is doing. They will say that America is trying to do what big powers are supposed to do in international politics. Therefore, when we are discussing these things, we shouldn't make it a Ghanaian discussion. This is a global discussion, and in international relations, power politics play a major role. So if you talk about realists are people who believe in national interests. They believe in hard politics. They believe in survival in a competitive international system. So with all those understanding, it means therefore that when events occur in the global system, you have to look at the perpetrators of those events and what may be influencing what they are doing. For example, if you take Donald Trump, he's been clear. One of the things about Donald Trump that he speaks his mind, so you cannot second guess him. He talked about why they went to Venezuela, partly because they want to take control of their resources. Now, if a country is so ambitious to take control of another country's resources, your appeal to moral argument is not going to stop that person. Therefore, what you need to do is that you need to understand the hawkish elements of the government. If you take the Donald Trump Republican Party, they are the hawkish element of that party now, who are controlling the foreign affairs decisions of the government, and they will not stop at nothing. We are just seeing that Donald Trump is determined to take over Greenland, and he has signaled that he will do that wherever it pleases, America. Therefore, we need to now sit up and be aware that international politics is not only about moral appeals. If you look at the UN itself, the UN as we have now is a compromise. Compromise in the sense that when the League of Nations collapsed in the aftermath of the First World War, something have to give. So in 1945, the big powers have to compromise in a way of the Security Council for veto power. That is why nothing gets done at the UN Security Council, because the moment one country vetoes a decision, that is it. Which tells us that we need to look at the politics. How do you build alliances? Russia is a veto power wielding member. China is a member of that sort also. France and the UK and the United States. How do you make sure that at every given point in time, all these countries come together? That's the only way you can make a decision that will satisfy everybody, but that is always very impossible. Therefore, I would argue that we in Africa have to begin to build alliances and also make sure that we don't depend on the moral conscience of other countries to solve our problems for us, because those countries may not be looking at morality. They will be looking at national interests, what works for them. So we as a continent or as countries in Africa have to begin to be economically independent. We have to also be able to protect ourselves against foreign aggression. If we were to sit in Ghana right now and our president is going to be abducted by another country, do we have the military power and strength to protect ourselves? Because if you look at our foreign policy principle, the number A, the A element says protection of our national interest. So I would say that
what is our national interest?
Exactly. So that's what I'm coming to. Every country, you see, the Constitution provides a broad framework, but the government of the day have to define what our national interest is. National interest is not fixed. It keeps changing. And as Professor Gabriel said, historically it has evolved. Today we are talking about economic diplomacy as part of our foreign policy concern.
And is that not what the people say in terms of argument, that if you get your national interest clearly, that defines your foreign policy, doesn't it?
Yes. So you need to define your national interest and also use what you call capabilities. You see, it is not enough to define your national interest. So let's say your national interest is to protect yourself against foreign aggression. How are you going to achieve that? You can only achieve that if you have the military or economic resources to defend yourself. So you need to have what's called capabilities. America is able to do the things they do. You hear them boasting that they took a lot of airplanes to Venezuela. They didn't lose any of their military men, and no country can attack them. If they don't have the military or the economic capability, they wouldn't have achieved what they achieved in Venezuela. So national interests have to be defined within the context of capabilities. Do we have what it takes to protect our national interests?
I will come back to you, Professor Yevuga, because I want to build on that with you, Dr. Agbe. Because again, you have your national interest that helps you to define your foreign policy. Is that not why people think that we may not really be straightforward with our foreign policy, although Professor Yevuga disagrees with that? Because then you have the non-aligned movement that I talked about earlier. You had Professor Milsei Zufia Sem during the 2010-2011 Ivory Coast crisis. And now you're having a government that seems to be very vociferous, talking about what is spelled out in international law and even the UN Charter.
Yes, for me, I don't see any contradiction as far as the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is concerned. It's quite comprehensive. It touches on the UN Charter that we almost 194 countries are signed on to the UN Charter that regulates all the institutions, that regulates all international bodies as well as nations. And that is the foundation of international law and international relations. So when you looked at the statement and you read the statement carefully, it talks about the sovereignty of Venezuela. It talks about the territorial boundaries of Venezuela. I mean, among every country in this world, we all have sovereignty. Without sovereignty, every state will become more like a jungle. And so it is sovereignty and territorial boundaries that confines us such that no aggressor will just wake up one day and come and attack Ghana because of our sovereignty. And so when it comes to that point, then Ghana has a self-defense. In the case of United States, as we are talking about, they violated all rules that governs international norms and international diplomacy. Nobody invited them. President Nicolas Maduro never consented to him to come and support him in terms of anything. Venezuela has never attacked United States of America. And more to the point, the United States of America was not under any aggression at all.
That was the point in terms of, you said Ghana can defend itself because of these things that we've put out.
Yeah.
But you heard Professor Yevuga say that you need that economic and all the other resources to be able to even protect what you believe in.
Precisely so. And in this world, you need to have two key things. You need to have the military power. You need to have economic power. Those are the things that when you have it and you have it very well, it can secure your territorial boundary. Where most countries, smaller countries, that's why we have major powers of the world and we have smaller countries or middle-level countries in the world. And what is manifesting in Venezuela as against United States is purely what we call great power politics. Great power politics in the sense that Donald Trump has realized, the genesis of the whole thing is that Donald Trump has realized that Venezuela president has signed a comprehensive energy, program with China, which Venezuela is almost going to export 60% of their oil resources to China, and which will affect the Western Hemisphere in terms of what Donald Trump and America want to do. So as we speak now, Venezuela has almost 17% of oil resources in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Now they are only mining almost about 1%. And so signing an agreement with America's main competitor in the world politics now, with China, which Venezuela is going to export 60%, that provoked President Donald Trump to say that, no, I will not allow somebody within the Western Hemisphere, within my territory, somebody will come and just carry almost 60% of the oil resources.
In other words, the narco-terrorism is just a facade.
Or it was just a facade. That is what United States believes in. At any point in time, they have a strategy to put a false charge on other countries to say that this is what you are a bad boy, you are a bad girl, and so we need to deal for you. As we speak now, I mean, with the emergence of Donald Trump, he has threatened almost many countries. Now Greenland, Cuba is there, Colombia is there. Which other country? Even Canada. He started with Canada, threatening almost other countries. So you could realize that, yes, the hegemonic power of United States is what is so phenomenal. And they are just using it such that it will amass United States, world power, which within international context of politics, what they are doing, they are damaging their own credibility. To the extent that as we speak now, United States image is just dwindling. So when it happens like that, China will obviously emerge. Russia will also emerge. As we speak now, the world is competing. 3 countries, United States, China, Russia, they are competing. And that's why we call it great power politics. Great power in a sense that these countries are competing as to who is to lead in the next future. Indeed. And that is why he's so aggressive to the extent that he wants to capture many oil resources so that the world politics of dollar petrol will not negate American currency. And that is what Donald Trump is doing.
And indeed, when we come back, we'll look at that global geopolitics change and really go into that conversation about what Africa needs to do and ensure that the countries within the continent are positioned well. Do stay with us. And you're still here on Agenda on TV3. Tonight we're discussing where Ghana's foreign policy lies in the midst of recent statements concerning what's happening in Venezuela, also the earlier incidents of Israel-Palestine and our comments and all of that. I do have in the studio with me Dr. David Agbe, Executive Director, Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. I also do have Professor Lord Mawuku Yevuga, who is joined us via video call. Also, Mr. Ras Mubarak, Pan-Africanist, and Dr. Yaw Gebe, Head of Department, International Relations, Wisconsin University. And I want to start with you this time around, Doc, because if you look at Ghana's statements, again, I refer to the two major ones, Israel-Palestine and this latest Venezuela issue. It looks like the country is not afraid of the U.S. How does that fit in the recent global geopolitics change? You talk about the emergence of BRICS and the decisions of nations to join and the way forward, really, trying to deal with the U.S. Dominance.
Thank you very much. I have to start from the premise that constant, instantaneous condemnations amount to lamentation. And that's what we are witnessing in the international system. And let me take you back to one point raised about the national interest. Every nation globally has what we call core national interests and residual or elementary national interests. What are the core national interests? The maintenance of territorial integrity and sovereignty. And these are out there for every nation, government, leader to promote and protect. But unfortunately for the international system, we have the big powers and the small powers. There is no way Ghana can be able to, that capability to protect itself against such things that we are seeing today, against the United States, against France, and what have you. So, this kind of normative assumptions as if we can actually use them to promote the integrity of the international system is unfounded. Because the big powers do the things they want to do. After all, the United States belongs to the United Nations. Almost every other nation, Africa, Asia, Europe, count them, Latin America, they belong to the United Nations. They've all condemned what the United States have done. But what is the issue involved for me is the resolution. It is not the constant condemnation that is important. And I made the point, and one of my colleagues actually pointed to it. The United Nations has become completely redundant. Because at the end of it all, those 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council hold the magic wand. That is the veto power.
And one of them is the one doing this.
And the United States is one of them. Just imagine, I referred to it earlier. If today the United Nations decide to come out with a resolution to condemn what the United States has done, that same United States will veto it. So what is the progress? No progress. So seriously, we have a problem, structural problems with the United Nations. It can actually show its teeth, it cannot bite. One of my colleagues again made the point that Africa must come out with its solution, probably own a nuclear weapon. Don't think that is the solution. Is it Ghana? Is it Nigeria, South Africa, re-arming itself with nuclear weapons? What will be the dividend? What will be the result? What will be the outcome of that?
Well, with BRICS, you've got Russia on.
Well, these same nations that we are mentioning, China has nuclear weapons. Now Russia has nuclear weapons. The United States, Great Britain, they have nuclear weapons. Yes, but they belong to the same groups. We're talking of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. These powerful nations belong to NATO. And you see what they are doing. If you take the example of Russia and Ukraine, okay? So, nothing has been done. NATO cannot intervene in what Russia is doing in Ukraine. Similarly, the United States has done everything possible to support Israel in what it is doing to the Palestinians. Okay? So realistically, I'm looking at the two sides of of what is going on.
Do I hear you say that although you want, for instance, the UN to move beyond the rhetorics of condemnation and act, you still do not see any way forward as regards how we can deal with this imbalance on the international front?
Because the United Nations structurally is immobile. It doesn't have the wherewithal to do anything. Why? Because those permanent members of the Security Council they have the wherewithal. They have the wherewithal to move the international society the way they want.
So when you talk about structural changes, what do you expect that will change the narrative?
Structural change, repeatedly, anytime I find these world leaders gather in New York, what they talk about is what? The democratization of the United Nations. The United Nations was not established on democracy. It was fundamentally based on the wishes, the interests of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. those 5 permanent members who won the Second World War. Okay? So they have actually woven a cloth that fits them, that suits them. And they actually contravene some of the rules, the regulations of the same United Nations when it suits them. Yes, just let me take you back into history. It was the same United States, 1989-90, decided that what Saddam Hussein was doing against Kuwait was illegal, unacceptable, contravening the sovereignty of another state. Therefore, with the support of the United Nations, decided to remove Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. Okay? Today, let's ask ourselves, is there any member of the United Nations willing and able to restore democracy to Venezuela? Tell the United States, go and restore Maduro to his position as the president of Venezuela. It's not possible. So there is this kind of double standards going on within the United Nations. So, well, we will talk a whole lot about normatives, the norms, the principles that underpin the United Nations. But hard politics says otherwise. And it is becoming so difficult for us to resolve these problems. And I made the point that constant condemnation, which I have classified as lamentations, will not solve the problem. Even tomorrow, next tomorrow, the same things will happen again. And all that, look, Ghana has done so well to condemn what the United States has done. And so what? What is the result? What is the benefit for us as a country beyond the condemnation?
What do you expect
Nothing.
Ghana to do beyond the condemnation?
So, you see, foreign policy is such that even if you keep quiet, it's foreign policy.
Yes.
I would have expected Ghana to be just quiet on this issue.
Why?
Because if we are not careful, the political, financial, economic ramifications for our nation, for our state, will be different. Things that we don't expect. You see, it's not everything that you have to comment on. That's also foreign policy. So everything that occurs in the international system, before we realize, we are speaking, we are talking, so that they identify us as what? Progressive?
There are those who argue that...
This is the only point that I would strongly disagree with my own professor. In a sense that
Can I land on this issue? Can I land? Since I'm stopping,
Okay, land quickly and I'll come back to you for your reaction.
The point is this. It's not just the condemnation. Once in a while, look at your own circumstance. As a country, as a nation, what can we do? After all the condemnation, next time you are going to the same United States for financial support.
There are those who argue that perhaps Ghana may be talking this way because the country is looking at other avenues like China and other Asian countries to do business.
But you are yet to go there. You are yet to go there. You are going back to the same United States tomorrow for financial assistance. You are going back to the same United States for other kind of technical assistance. So once, and I made the point again, there are nations, very important big powers in this world, who rarely talk on every international issue because with foreign policy, even silence is acceptable.
But that's condoning the wrong thing.
Not that you are condoning. Not that you are condemning. You are looking at your own. Your national interest is first and foremost. Territorial integrity, sovereignty.
You haven't established your national interest.
We have, and I have just told you, core national interest, and then what? Residual national interest. The core national interest, your sovereignty and your territorial interest, these are the core national interests. So far as you are able to preserve them, the next thing is about economic development. But to come out every time to be condemning, to be lamenting, I don't see the fruitfulness of it. That's my reservation.
Dr. Agbe, you wanted to comment, then I'll come back to you, Mr. Mubarak and Prof.
This is the point of divergence that I will actually contradict my own professor who taught me in international relations, based on the fact that, as we speak now, within the geopolitics of West Africa, Ghana is the only strong ally of the United States of America. And so if a critical issue like this emerges, where United States has invaded another country's territorial boundary, more like circumvent their constitution, circumvent their territorial control, and more like condemn now the sovereignty of Venezuela is more like mortgage or conditional to United States of America. When it happens like that, and Ghana and other countries, we do not talk about it. The next moment, we will go and crash another country. Look at what the incident that happened in Nigeria recently. What happened? Donald Trump crashed some of the Boko Haram, people in consent with, Nigeria, in consent. But in this case, what crime has Venezuela, committed? They've not committed any
Our dear
crime.
hostess, let me just counter the point he's
So,
made because it's very important. Look, people in Venezuela today are on the street jubilating.
It is very
Listen,
few.
you listen.
Very few.
People, yes, but they are. The opposition leader is saying that she's going back to Venezuela to canvass democratically for re-election.
But you've
as the
also had
president
the vice president who has been sworn in now as the president condemning
Yes, so
what
she has been
did.
cautioned. I am making a point because of the Nigerian issue he has just made. It is the same Nigeria who has condoned that Donald Trump comes into the country to help them, to stop Boko Haram and those other people from destroying the country.
I'm coming
So
back
what
to
is
you,
the point
Mr.
here?
Mubarak. I'm coming back to you because
What
you
is
made
the
a point
point?
earlier about the need for Africa to come together to be able to help in the shift of the global geopolitics. Dr. Yaugebe doesn't seem to be very optimistic about that. How do you think that can be made possible, really? Especially when you made a point earlier that Ghana on its own cannot do much.
Well, I mean, to begin with, these events are quite instructive, but we shouldn't be surprised. Why? Who pays the piper calls the tune. How much does the United States of America contribute to the budget of the United Nations? 22% is the highest, contributor to, the budget of the UN. So who in the UN can possibly? And under Trump, you've seen instances where he's threatened that they are going to withhold UN funding. I mean, the closest to the US in terms of funding of the UN is China, which is 20%, followed by Japan, 6%, Germany, 6%, UK, 3%. All right? And so it is exceedingly important that the scales, the balance of power is heavily tilted against weaker nations. And the bigger nations would do what they want to do anyway. Nobody can do anything about it. Nobody can so moto sanction the United States of America. Nobody can sanction, Europe has sanctioned, Russia, but that's something entirely different. In terms of our part of the world, what powers do we seriously wield, to be able to say, look.
So the battle is lost even before we start?
Absolutely, because the funding is coming from the US, and that is why I would, encourage the African continent to focus on what we can do strategically, in the best interest of the continent of Africa. I'm not saying we should tilt far away towards, one, player over the other. We've got to, be smart with this. The scales of power geopolitically, changes every now and then. You've seen instances where kingdoms are falling. Russia is on the decline. It may have a nuclear, capability, etc., but its economy, as a result of the sanctions, is in tatters. Do you tilt too far towards Russia? I say that would be foolhardy. Do you also tilt too far towards the United States of America? I said that would be foolhardy, because the US would not be a superpower forever. You can go down in history, Roman Empire, even in Africa, Mali Empire, Songhai Empire, etc. So there's going to come a time when there's dominance, geopolitically, by the United States of America would wane. There's going to come a time. As to when, I don't know. But they're going to lose relevance some way, somehow. And that is why it has become important for Africa to, balance. We are not enemies of the US, but we are not, entirely your friends. We are not enemies of Russia and China, but we are not entirely your friends.
So, Mr. Mubarak, then the question is...
Ghana has played this role very smartly over the years, from Nkrumah's era till date. I've seen some other African countries who have tilted either too far away to the left or too far away to the right. And I say that is dangerous, for countries in Africa, especially given that we haven't gotten our act together to be able to manage our own economies properly. We've got everything in this African continent. And that is why there's got to be a reset in the way we do things in Africa. One, we've got to strengthen regional integration, align closely to one another. All these, nonsensical visa restrictions for Africans is inhibiting trade amongst ourselves. Trade is the future for Africa. If we're not trading a lot more amongst ourselves, these superpowers would continue to take us for a ride.
Dr. Yaugebe made a point earlier about we being silent because you need to consider what's in your pocket before you go out talking. Yes, so the question is, how do you...
The fact that we don't have what it takes to impose sanctions on a rogue country, on a country that is completely thrown to the dogs, the UN Charter, United States of America in this case, I don't think we should be silent. We've never been silent.
So let me ask my question, which is that in the midst of that, you need to be able to balance, as it were, moral diplomacy, strategic neutrality, and national interest as well. In like a minute, if you could answer that as well, how do we go about that? I'll go to Professor Yevuga for his final word and then my panel here.
We're on the right side of history. The indignation by Ghana, our righteous indignation. I mean, it's always been like this. From Nkrumah, Champong, through the democratic era. We've always strongly, condemned bad behavior by, leading or, if you like, superpowers. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the Nana Addo administration condemned them. The Mahama administration has condemned the rogue behavior of Israel and now the United States of America. That is the way we've always conducted our foreign relations. And I think that is positive. The fact that we do not have what it takes to say, look, we don't even want to deal with you because of your bad behavior, does not mean we shouldn't call out bad behavior. So that is positive. But I'm saying key to Africa becoming independent, not relying heavily on either the East or the West.
And if you could wrap up for me, Mr. Mubarak, I'm sorry.
It's for us to put our act together, build more infrastructure, strengthen, regional bodies, strengthen the African Union. Clearly, the AU is not doing a lot of things right. I mean, you would expect that by now, a standing army would have gone into Mali and Niger and Nigeria, crashed, the insurgents in these places.
All right, I need to come to Professor Yevuga, but let me read just a couple of your messages. Kankam Kenneth on Facebook says, Abraham who jeopardizing the future of the youth in this country. It is needless to concern the actions of USA in this country, of USA, because we don't have that capacity. Akudugu Dominic says, Ghana did the right thing by condemning US action. We must move beyond bootlicking of superpowers just to maintain good blood between us, to give to give us the opportunity to go and beg. Come on, this action strengthens us, pushes us to sit back and address our own challenges. There is Chat Rachel on YouTube says, yes, Dr. Gebe, US to some extent is state-centric, which comprises, I can't really get that, but you say military power, economic power, 100%. And then there's another statement says, considerably so, Professor Yevuga, it is about time we created close allies and fortified that bond economically, diplomatically, etc. Let me get your final word, Professor Yevuga, really, on moving forward in the midst of the arguments that have been made. Do we have to come together as a continent to be able to help shift this global politics?
Yeah, so I'll locate my concluding remarks, tying it with what Dr. Gebe said. You see, condemnation is good. It's good to make this statement that we'll be making. But I think his point, and I agree that we have to go beyond that. Because you can't condemn the Americans for doing this. Then they are the only people you're also dealing with, going there for money and loans and what have you. That is why we need to go back to Kwame Nkrumah's vision for Africa. If we want to play a major role, condemnation, this has to be backed by economic power. You cannot be condemning all the time. Nobody will take you seriously if you cannot fund your foreign policy independently. So I think that our independence as a country is not complete if we are not economically independent. And we can only be a voice in the global system if you are economically independent, and if you are also able to mobilize. One of the things we haven't done well as a country is that we are.
I'll be grateful for you to wrap up for me. I'm sorry.
So we need to go back to the Pan-Africanist agenda of pushing for African unity. That gives us a bargaining power in the global system. Thank you.
In 30 seconds, Dr. Agbe.
Yeah, Beatrice, my concluding remarks is the fact that we are all friends of America. However, if America does anything which is wrong, we need to say it. The ideational values of America is all about democracy. They didn't go to Venezuela to strengthen their institution. They didn't go there as a result of fundamental human rights abuses or whatever it is. They went there purely on a commercial, interest.
Oil.
Oil. That is all. And so it is so condemnable and horrific to the extent that United States will just invade into the territorial, boundaries of other countries. When it happens like that, we become more like a jungle where the strong and the mighty one always prevail, and which is, wrong for our, international politics.
Prof, your final words in 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, sure. The point is this. Nation states globally do not pursue normative interests all the time. They use their power, their resources to go for what they want. That is the pursuit of the national interest. What is the foremost national interest of Ghana, of African countries? Economic development, the welfare of the citizenry. Let us be mindful of those things and forget about constant generic condemnation, which doesn't bring anything to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. David Agbe, Executive Director, Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. Thank you for joining us in the studio. Of course, as well to you, Dr. Yaw Gebe, Head of Department, International Relations, Wisconsin University. To my guest of our video call, Professor Lord Mawoko Yevuga, Director, Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement, also lecturer at GIMPA. Thank you as well. And also Pan-African activist, Mr. Ras Mubarak. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us on Agenda tonight. My name is Beatrice Edu. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.